Welcome to the Baller Boyz Podcast. They're all about sports, and more sports. And now, the Baller Boyz, Mark and Shemaya.
Hello, and welcome back to the Baller Boyz Podcast. It's your boy, Mark, and I am not doing this alone. I am joined by the SOTB, the music man with the plan, Shemaya.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Red Bull gives you wings, but it doesn't give everyone wings, as you will see in this the title of this episode, this podcast. We're going to be talking about a pretty controversial person right now. But before we get to that, let's start off with something a little more positive. Baller Boyz, thank you all for listening to the Baller Boyz Podcast. We can be found in all podcast streaming services everywhere. Type in Baller Boyz Podcast with Mark and Shemaya. There you go. Thank you all for giving us your ear every time. And we know how valuable time is. And thank you for just listening to us banter about sports and just doing that. We do this thing after work. It's about as blue collar as you can imagine. You know, just a couple of guys just talking sports, purple. Doing their thing. Very true. He's got the point there. But thank you all. Thank you all for listening in, and continue to do that, please, because we appreciate the support. And don't forget to get a little more involved too. If you want to leave a comment, leave a review, let us know how we're doing. If we suck, let us know why. At least it's some sort of feedback. So thank you all. Now, Shemaya, we've got ourselves quite the topic today. We're going to talk about Russell Westbrook. This name alone can generate a ton of heat, a lot of reactions. But we're just going to talk Russell Westbrook because this guy, in a matter of 2 or 3 seasons, has gone from an MVP to now he can't stay on a team, one and done with the Wizards, with the Rockets, with the Lakers, and he cannot seem to find a home anymore. And his stats, I pulled up some of his stats here, and really there's not too much of a difference. I mean, in 2018, which was the last year he was with the Thunder, he played 73 games, 36 minutes, 22 points a game, 29% from three. Again, Russell Westbrook has never been a good three-point, shooter, so that doesn't surprise me too much. But the big thing here that I noticed was his rebounding numbers went down, his assist numbers went down, and his it seems like his decent decision-making has gone down as well. Just based on what we've seen on the Lakers, he seems to have played at least last season with more laziness in his step, just less IQ, almost like a sense of uncaring. And in his media scrums after games, he just comes across like meh, like whatever, I'm doing my thing. I'm not going to let it bother me. But the thing is, a good NBA player doesn't let the media bully them, but they have to acknowledge when they are making a mistake. And Russell Westbrook he said, he doesn't really see too much of a problem with what he's doing, or at least with last season with the Lakers, where a lot of people were pointing out his flaws and kind of pointing out lazy plays on his behalf. But there's a difference between, just ignoring everything and, letting something, bother you. And then I'm not going to let the media attack me, bully me. I'm not going to let people get to me, but I'm going to acknowledge that I have flaws. That is what Russell Westbrook should have done last season. And instead, he's coming across as this guy, like, I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to be playing. And the whole basketball world knows that he has got problems, and they were on full display last season. So with that being said, Shemaya, what are your thoughts on Russell Westbrook?
Well, first, before I say anything negative about Russell Westbrook, can you imagine if you're MF trying to say his name? Russell Westbrook.
Ryan Westbrook.
That's
Russell Wilson.
Okay. Jeez. But no, before I kind of give my thoughts on that, the good thing I would say about Russell Westbrook is he is the only player in the NBA history to have scored at least 35 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 16 times in one season. So I have to give him those proper, respect. No one's doubting him to be a great player, but you point out that he has flaws. And my thoughts is he's a player that probably hasn't really lived to his fullest potential. And I know that's probably harsh, but what I'm trying to say, I know I have like 10,000 pauses, but bear with me. This is like we're going in school zone right now, so we're driving like 25 miles per hour versus 90 miles per hour. Russell just has like the work ethic to work hard, you know what I'm saying, in most of his career. I don't know what happened with LA Lakers. I think he kind of forgot to work. And I know that sounds harsh too. But I'm just trying to be careful because, like I said, overall, I would say he would be an average NBA player on the top side. He's not like a low. I'm trying to be very careful with my words. He's not a deadbeat player. He was last season compared to like what he's been capable of doing, right? But my thoughts is simply this. He is not the player that we saw in Oklahoma, if that makes sense. Because I believe in his earlier days, I think he was just a little bit more sharper. And you could probably argue and say he wasn't, but I'm just saying, like the stat I put out there, the only player in NBA history to record at least 35 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 16 times in one single season. And he's up there. And that's the point I want to make. He did that in Oklahoma when he was in Oklahoma. So my point is simply he is not really right now living up to his potential, man, as an athlete. And
go ahead.
One quick thing. I know I've been like 10 million pauses, but first and foremost, I want to make it clear that I respect him as a person. He does a lot of things with fashion and stuff, on the side, outside of the NBA. He gives back. He does all this good stuff as one should, right? You ought to do that when you're making good money like that. But being critical of his game, I will tread lightly on that, on eggshells, but I would say he has been disappointing lately. His game has been disappointing. Because I think his potential is a lot much greater than what has been displayed since last year, recently of last year. Because last year, I just feel like he just felt like, I'm not feeling this right now. And that's the only best way I can describe it. I just feel like not necessarily that he gave up 100%. Someone probably would say he did. I could probably agree. But I think it's not so much that he gave up 100%. I think he just got really comfortable and just like underperforming. But I think he did have sparks last year. But it was, if you look at the whole season, it was like more like a flicker.
Yeah. And I think the fact that the Lakers struggled as well as a whole, and a lot of people just like to blame Westbrook as the sole reason for the Lakers.
Hey, that's a good point because he was the only one. Like it wasn't like everybody else was on fire. Like everybody else was
exactly. Well, the rest of the team was crap too. I mean, no.
He just got a lot of blame because I think people, including myself, I can't speak for anybody, but I speak for myself. I expected him to really like push that team, to have a chance to go to the finals. Like I thought it was going to be a monster team. But it was like the opposite day. It was like you say one thing, and then boom, this happened. It's like the total opposite expectation of the season was just like, whoa.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing. I think everyone's expectations, was like, oh, this team is going to the finals. This team is going to do it all. They're going to pull it off. But and I think that really hurt Westbrook's character in general and his performance. Don't get me wrong, he had some bright spots in that season, but there were also a lot of bad spots that were on display on social media, especially. I don't know how many clips I've seen of Westbrook either just getting lazy on offense, just chugging up shots, just not looking like his normal self. And you would think it's weird because he's been put in a position to win a championship with the most recognizable NBA player of our generation in LeBron James. And you've got Anthony Davis there. Of course, he's got his injuries issues as well, as so did LeBron. Again, that's going back to how the Lakers as a whole, like the team, just kind of let themselves down last season. Of course, you can't help it with injuries, but these guys are getting older. AD, dealing with injuries. LeBron's getting older. And they already didn't have a proper roster to support these three, I think. Like some of these guys coming off the bench just were not helping them, and their defense struggled last year too. And when you have a defense that can't help the offense that is already struggling and playing like with injured guys and LeBron and AD, you're going to struggle. And that's exactly what the Lakers did. And they couldn't afford for Westbrook to even drop in quality at all compared to what he was last season. Well, before he played with the Lakers, he was averaging 22 points a game with the Wizards. His 3-point percentage was up, actually. This past season with the Lakers, he only scored 18.5 points per game, 29% from three. So his 3-point percentage dropped as well. His assists dropped. His rebounding dropped. Everything dropped from the season before he came to LA. And don't get me wrong, he does pass the ball to other guys to get their stats up, so his stats would naturally go down. But at the same time, you see Westbrook making these really bad decisions and almost kind of playing hero ball to his own detriment. And that's another thing you'll see with some of these players is they try to play hero ball and do it themselves when they really need to get the other guys involved. But as we just talked about, Shemaiah, when your Lakers roster is not built properly, you kind of have no choice as a quote unquote star player that Russ thought he was. He's a very good player, but I think star Russell Westbrook is gone. He's going to go into hero mode where he has to feel like he does it himself. And of course, when you have volume players, volume scorers like that, they're more than likely going to make mistakes. And that's just how it is. It's like asking a quarterback to have to throw twice as much as he has to. And when he ends up with more interceptions, it's no surprise. It still doesn't make him look good, but it shouldn't be surprising because you're asking him to do more. And Russ just playing hero ball, but just not making the right decisions hurt the Lakers.
I mean, it's another analogy. It's like having Tom Brady throw the ball with a blindfold. And it doesn't matter how good he is, he's in an impossible situation for him to even perform. And I feel like Westbrook, if you will, because I still think he's a player that can grow into something even more than what we've seen. I think he's going to have star power like a LeBron or something like that. Maybe not. Maybe not even as much star power as Kevin Durant.
I'll ask you a question after you go. Go ahead.
Because I won't say who said it, but someone had a good point where they questioned his basketball IQ. And I'm not a basketball player, so I'm automatically disqualified for even talking in that conversation. But there can be some arguments made with that. It's not saying that Russell is not a great NBA player. It's not saying that at all. But it is saying he's not in that elite room, if you will. And that's why I feel he has to really show everybody, not tell everybody what his thoughts are. He just has to show on the floor. And I think he's kind of getting up there in age where it's like can he, you know, I mean, yes, can he play basketball? Yes, of course. But can he be on that elite status? Can he be in the elite talk like LeBron, Steph Curry, KD, you know, even Giannis? Giannis is above Westbrook, in my opinion.
And I was about to ask you, so I want to ask you this question. Is Russell Westbrook still an all-star to you?
I think he is. I think he is, because he also he holds the record of being one, two players in the NBA history to have at least 40 triple doubles in one season. So, you know, he has some good records on his sheet. It's just that what we saw last season with LA Lakers, it's like, wait, it's this. This don't look like the guy who's carrying these records in the NBA. It looked like a guy who either got tired and said, you know what, I'm going to rest this season and not put my input in my 100%. But one thing I'll be careful is I won't deny Russell's greatness and say that he is washed up and should not be playing in the league. But one's going to scratch their head, though, and say, man, is he going to be fully, you know, committed to playing his best game? You know, I mean, at least we're not comparing him to someone that is a big question mark, and that's Ben Simmons. We're not that far down the rabbit hole, but one will question, man, is he good, man? Like, does he really want to play basketball anymore? Like, you know, he's probably going to listen to this podcast and probably break some records. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. But one can only hope that he just really does the opposite than what he did last season. Because last season it was tough to watch, man. Like, watching the press and all that. It was tough, man, because it's like we see what we see.
They were getting on him. Yeah, they were getting on him after every game. And the thing is with him, you know what else I noticed about that season too, is even when he did have a good game, there was still always that cloud of doubt over him.
It was always some kind of slant. Mm-hmm. And they kept bringing up old stuff. But the problem is when people consistently see you not doing something to elevate a team, it's hard for them to not talk about it and point that out. Now, in his defense, there's a lot of distractions that happen. Like, if you look at the past 2 years, the world that we live in, there's been plenty of distractions, but, you know, someone who's been in the NBA or is in the NBA, you probably be like, man, no, that's baloney. Like, we all had to go through that. You know, we all had to face distractions on and off the court. You know, I mean, he had his fair share with the fans' interactions. So, you know, it's a lot of points that can be made for him or against him. But the bottom line is that he has not been the old Westbrook that we saw in Oklahoma City. That's just proof. There's no way anybody can say that he played better outside Oklahoma. I think he played his best game when he was with Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he won his MVP there, like you said, his triple-double record.
And does he still have that fire? Like, that's the question. Like, you would respect his age and say, oh, no, he's going to be good. He's going to bring it. But the question is he, though? Because what we saw last year, everyone's going to be scratching their head and say, man, like, he looks good on paper. But is he on fire, man?
It's funny you bring up the paper thing, because it's one thing to, like you said, to see the numbers on the paper, like, oh, he scored 20 points this game. That's pretty good. But when you look at some of the footage and some of the decisions that he's made,
it's off.
Like, it leaves you scratching your head. Like, okay, now we see why this team isn't winning sometimes.
Because, like, I feel like, like LeBron, when the season was over, he immediately, like, We saw him in the gym, workouts and stuff in the summer. And if you look at Westbrook, you just hope he brings that passion to the court when the upcoming season starts. Because if he doesn't do that, man, like people they're just gonna rehash last year, and they're gonna say, "Well, see, this is exactly the way he was last year." He's just inconsistent. And this is not where he was like in Oklahoma. And people can make good points and say, "Well, he had KD in Oklahoma and blah blah blah." But the point is, I don't think he's that elite name that you talk about, right? He's not the jersey that everybody's talking about wearing. I don't hear anybody in my neighborhood talking about getting a Westbrook jersey, but that can change because he does have potential. He does have stats to his name that suggest that he's a decent NBA player. And I would say more than decent, he's a great NBA player. He's just not on that level of elite players, at least not yet. And can he go past that level? I'm going to have to say, I don't think so, man. I think age is going to catch up with him. But it won't deny his heart for the game. And that's something that he can show that will really set the tone. Question I have for you, right on the spot. Do you think he's Hall of Fame material when it's all said and done?
Absolutely.
See, that's what I'm getting at. Like, if his heart shows for the rest of his career, then he can take away that he is Hall of Fame material. And I have to agree with that. I think he is. Because what we saw him do, he's in the same talks as far as the stat I said earlier about one of the two players in NBA history to record at least 40 triple doubles in a season. Like, the only other one is Oscar Robertson. So if you look at the IQ of the game, disclaimer, I have no idea what it is because I've never been in the NBA, never been affiliated with it, never been a coach, never been blah, blah, blah. But you have to suggest that Westbrook is not just an average player, right? He's a player that has a certain style. It's aggressive. It's Westbrook, And we can see that old Westbrook, then maybe people can appreciate his game a little bit better. So we can be all more educated on who he is as a player, because only he can teach us. But every time we watch footage, body language, all that stuff, he's teaching us.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. If he does revert back to his old fire where he's a little more controlled, he's focusing a little more on the IQ, his decision making. Yeah, I think he still definitely has years left in the league. And I'm not saying he needs to retire right now or anything. They're still there. Like, there's still something there in the tank for him.
If Chris Paul is still in the league, Westbrook is going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing with there's like Paul, like Paul's thing is his injuries. Westbrook's thing is his decision making and his dedication to what team he's on. So if only Westbrook had Chris Paul's dedication and Chris Paul
because he don't have his injuries, so he probably have like 2 or 3 rings right now.
Yeah. Like if Chris Paul had Westbrook's like athletic ability and his endurance, then, oh my gosh, yeah, like you said, he would have won a couple of rings. But if Westbrook had CP3's IQ, his decision-making, oh my gosh, I mean, Westbrook probably would have had a couple of rings himself too with KD in Oklahoma City.
Same thing with CP3. If he had Westbrook's durability, like he would just be like, yeah, he probably had at least, I would say 3, I would say 2 solid ones for sure. But yeah, again, Westbrook, the old days, it's like 90s music, man. It's well, I won't go that far because some people might argue with me and say Westbrook wasn't that good. But in my opinion, just in the context of what the topic is for the show, his old days is like the good old days in the 90s. It was just really good stuff. He was exciting to watch and when you watch Oklahoma. But he needs to bring that back if he wants to get a ring. If that's where we're like road mapping to, then if it's anything less than getting a ring, then he's just basically having fun in the league and that's it. But hopefully he's trying to map his way to potentially get a ring with somebody.
Yeah. Another thing that I think he needs to seriously consider is not playing hero ball and not having to feel like he has to be the guy on the floor, because there's almost like an identity thing going on with him in LA, especially last season. I don't know if you got that as well, but what I mean by that is like, you saw him try to be so aggressive, like the old OKC days, and like he just wouldn't make the shots, or he just wouldn't get to the basket and nail the dunk, or he would try this pass, or he would airball something, or he would do something and it would backfire on him as if he's just trying too hard. I think Westbrook needs to sit back and really consider what is his role right now, because to me, all-star Russell Westbrook is gone. And I'm not saying he can't still play. I'm not saying he doesn't have heart for the game. I'm not saying he doesn't have his durability. He can play. He showed that last season. He just needs to buckle down on his decision-making and not have to think that he has to be the guy. Because I got that feeling last season. He felt like a guy who was struggling with, okay, do I need to pass the ball off here, or do I need to force something?
Yeah, and another disclaimer, once again, I'm not trying to talk as if like I'm in the huddle calling plays for LA Lakers or qualified to suggest any basketball tips, but just as a fan, you know, analyzing what I see based on what I see. If Westbrook just go to the fundamentals of just team ball and just what can I do to set up LeBron to shine? What can I do to make his job easier? What's some of the things I can do on defense that creates more offense? Like, what can I do? Versus like you're just 7 months ago trying to be the saver, you know, like instead of walking on water, how can I have a boat that won't sink? You know, how can I just have the little things? You know, how about not drill a hole in the boat? You know, like I'm just saying,
exactly. Yeah,
it's like things that you can control, not things you can't control, but his attitude in the locker room. You know, it's not that it was toxic. It kind of was toxic, but it wasn't like he was trying to make everyone's life miserable on the team. It was just more so like he was just like very out of space, like he's just not in the moment. Like his mind was somewhere else.
It bothered me too. And again, with the media scrums, like after these games, sometimes he just wouldn't, it just came across like, oh, y'all are just trying to get on me. So I'm just not going to, you know, like I know y'all are my enemy, whatever, but there was no like responsibility. Like when there were bad games, when he made bad decisions, I felt like he just didn't come out enough and say, yeah, I did make some mistakes or whatever, you know, like I'm going to work on it. I'm going to improve for the next game. I just didn't see enough of that from him. It almost felt like all superstar Russell Westbrook was out on the stand and, you know, like media is just trying to goad him into something. And he still thinks he's really, really good. Don't get me wrong. I think he's still good at this game and he just needs to clamp down on, like you said, the basics and his decision making. But I feel like he's at a crossroads right now where he hasn't accepted that he is no longer MVP Russell Westbrook. He is, and you brought up names like LeBron, Giannis. He's nowhere near those guys right now.
I wish he was, but there's no way. Because reason why their basketball IQ is just sharper. It's just way sharper, and that's just the truth. No one can tell me that his IQ is sharper than LeBron's or Giannis when it comes to basketball. There's just no way. It's not even close.
Yeah, or even like Jokic or like Luka, and those guys are younger too. You know, they got bright futures and just like you said, decision making and the ability to
they're in the
turn
moment.
The ball over. Yeah,
they play in the moment, and that's the difference. Like when I saw Lakers, he was passive. He wasn't like active and proactive. That's a better way. He wasn't proactive. He was more reactive to situations. And when you watch people like LeBron and Giannis, they just they see it before it happens. If that makes sense. Like they anticipate something and then they put themselves in position to either score or to create some play, And I would say he had moments. Westbrook had some good moments, but his bad moments outweigh his good moments in the last season with LA. And that's just unfortunate because, no one's going to look at the highlights you had if the nightmares were too heavy.
I mean, there were some games I saw last season where he would go on little runs where he was looking like the old Westbrook in OKC. And I was like, oh my gosh, did we just go back in time? Like there were some dunks he got. There was some ball handling that he was able to like get guys on ice skates with. And he hit some really like nothing but net shots. And you just saw those glimpses. And, you brought up that really good point just now about him being more reactive rather than proactive, just kind of not really anticipating, but kind of just following, like going through the motions of what's happening in front of him.
He's rolling his eyes right now. Like, oh my God, can y'all just go to the next topic?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if the foot fits the shoe. Wow, I can't talk to me. If the shoe fits the foot, the shoe. What kind of accent is that? If the shoe fits the foot, man. I mean,
the shoe fits the shoe.
Wow.
Russ.
He's gonna be like, hey, if you can't talk, why am I going to worry about you?
Why do y'all have a podcast? You guys can't even.
Hey, that's the definition of his season.
Well, and we're not even done talking about Russ. I wish we were, but can we talk about his defense?
What defense?
Exactly. Look, Russ, we just talked about his offense and his decision making. Dude, Russ, improve your defense, man. You can do it.
His defense is missing, just like my ability to say the word shoe.
Man, yeah.
You thought I was speaking Spanish the way I was talking. You thought he was. I'm not gonna go there, but
don't get me wrong, man. Like as we talked about earlier, the Lakers team last season as a whole had defensive problems all over the place and issues even spanning beyond that. Yeah. But Russ did not help them at all.
The Lakers were like a Lamborghini with all flats.
Yeah. It looked like good, but it ain't going anywhere.
As soon as they went down the street, they ran over like 20 screws that they did not anticipate to run over. Yeah. And basically shot down everything that everyone thought they was going to do. And that's unfortunate. You saw LeBron was frustrated.
No, everyone was, yeah.
I think LeBron was more embarrassed than he was frustrated because it was so much hype. It was so much hype.
It was embarrassing, and it should be.
I even had them going deep to the Western Finals playing the Warriors.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't get close.
You know what I respected? And this goes back to, that fire and like Russ's just seemingly lack of care, like as far as self-accountability for his performances was when you said, LeBron was embarrassed. Yeah. You know why LeBron's embarrassed? Because he cares a lot and he knows the expectations on the team and he wants the team to win. That's what bugged me when Russ was up there in front of the media and he would just be like, meh.
Okay. He was like, he's the person. Oh, this is going to sound terrible. How can I clean this up? All right, I'm going to clean it up. He's the person that watches someone, you know, when people have deck of cards, you can make like these little buildings and castles or whatever.
Oh, yeah, House of Cards.
He's the person, right? I should have just said that. He's the person.
I mean, if you make buildings of cards, that's pretty cool, though. There's nothing wrong with that.
But he's the person that pushes the one card that destroys the whole place. Yeah, I know that sounds harsh, but if you think about it, it's actually true. Because his attitude was never backed up with his action. Because it's one thing to have like I'm not feeling this season or whatever. Well, your other teammates are in the same position too. They're not feeling it either. But his attitude was basically like, I'm not doing nothing, on top of the fact that it's frustrating for everybody in the locker room. It's not that he didn't do anything at all. but he played at the level that's beneath than what we're used to seeing him when he was with Oklahoma. And I bet you that's what LeBron was hoping he was going to get, the Oklahoma guy. Instead, he got a surprise.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, even in Houston, he averaged like 27 points per game, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about now. Because he had only averaged 18 points a game last season. But hey, real quick, I want to ask your opinion on this. So just a little while ago, the Los Angeles Lakers acquired Patrick Beverley from the Jazz.
I saw that.
In exchange for Taylor Horton Tucker, I can't even speak, and Stanley Johnson. How are Westbrook and Beverly supposed to just get along, or do you think the Lakers are planning to trade Russell Westbrook?
Well, I mean, as long as no one has any, comments, because some people like making comments on TV about people, and that kind of backfired. As long as someone doesn't want to do that, I think they should get along pretty well.
Yeah, because a lot of people think that this is a move leaning in the direction of trading Westbrook. And I've seen a few other rumors pop up as well, kind of supporting that. But I'll tell you what, if this Lakers team gets to the playoffs, has a deep run with both Westbrook and Beverly on the same roster, that's going to speak volumes. And yeah, that alone.
Depending on his mind too.
Yeah, because we're talking.
If his mind's in the right place, then they're gonna have an opportunity to dominate. Because now it's a chip on their shoulder. They really want to prove every person wrong and basically shut up the media, which is easy to do if you do your job.
Exactly, and of course, Pat Beverly is no scrub either. He is one of the most infamous crap talkers in the NBA now, but people forget he's a good defensive player, man. We were just talking about how one of the biggest issues the Lakers had last season was their defense. And Pat Beverly alone brings legitimacy to that team on the defensive side of the ball. And hopefully Russ improves his defense as well, and then they could be a little more formidable. But this is all going to fall on Russ, man. If the team had to choose between Beverly and Westbrook, they're going to choose Beverly, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
Yeah. Because Russ isn't going to bring that elite defense. Pat does. And at least they won't have to worry about Westbrook turning the ball over a lot, airballing, making poor decisions. So really, this is a test for Westbrook to improve and to learn from his experience last season and to not settle. That's the big thing. I feel like Russ kind of settled a lot last season on things, whether it was for a poor shot or not really being more vocal about to his team about his accountability and his performances. He needs to show more dedication and more fire in that department.
Real quick, back to Patrick, call him Pat, whatever.
Oh, Patrick. You guys friends? You guys close friends?
Well, after this comment, he might be my friend. Patrick Beverly is a better teammate, in my opinion, than Westbrook will be to LeBron. Because I see Patrick as a very hungry player. He wants to eat. He's going to dive, deep in the stands to get the ball. He's going to do whatever he got to do for his teammates. I think that's the attitude you need right now with the Lakers. And they can get him wearing a Lakers uniform. Dude, I think him and LeBron going to have a steak dinner. And they be like, all right, let's make that run for that chip.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think this was a great pickup for them. Really, it just comes down to how these two guys are going to operate together.
Westbrook going to have to ride the bench, man.
In the locker room. Yeah. So this is really interesting. And we don't even know if this is it. Westbrook could just be traded. Now, before we close this out, I do want to say, I think Westbrook can rebound. I think his days as an all-star are over, though. I think he needs to sit down, look at himself in the mirror and say, look, I am not Mr. MVP anymore. I am not LeBron level. I'm not Giannis level. I'm not Jokic level. I'm not
Super
Luka
Mario
level.
Brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's not Mario anymore. He's not Luigi anymore.
People play Fortnite now, so
yeah.
you got to level up.
Right. Yeah. But I think Russ needs to sit down and tell himself, like, hey, it's a hard pill to swallow, but he's not the same player he used to be. And
I just had an image of Luigi talking to Westbrook. And Westbrook just dropped the coins.
That's terrible. Oh no. But look, I think Russell can definitely play on another team. He should. He could even be a starting point guard somewhere if he wants to, but he needs to sit down and not think that he has to be the guy to score all the points, to make all the plays, because he doesn't have to. You brought up a really good point earlier in this podcast about him looking at, setting up LeBron, setting up AD, setting up other guys for shots, make his other teammates better without feeling like he has to have volume and create everything.
And that's the point. Like, he probably felt like he was the one that needed to have the ball versus he could have just been the one that helped everybody else do better.
Yeah. Again, the hero ball mentality that we were talking about earlier in the episode. Yeah. I think he has to sit back and realize he doesn't have to do that. Even if he switches to that mindset next season, if he's still in the Lakers, I think they would be fine. I think he would put his ego in check, but he has to realize that I don't have to do everything. I need to get out of my old OKC days mindset and be more team friendly and not feel like I have to do it all, or, show a little bit more effort in different areas instead of having to have the ball in his hands all the time. That's the other thing too. He can put more effort into the other aspects of his game, like his defense, his reactions to his anticipation, instead of, having to worry about, how am I going to get to the paint right now? Or what's going to be my next 3-point attempt? It's just things that he can dedicate more energy, more focus on in other areas, instead of focusing on how he's going to drive to the basket whenever he gets the ball next. So, but he definitely should be in the league. He's only 33. So I think he's got like a good 3 more years. And he can definitely be serviceable to a team, and he deserves that. And he's a future Hall of Famer. He still has a lot to bring to the table, but I think it's going to take the right coach, the right locker room. Dude, if you put Westbrook as a backup on the Celtics, I mean, we're talking Westbrook could be like a 6th man of the year, like what the numbers he can put up, the disciplined locker room, Ime Udoka's mindset, the community. I think he just needs a really good locker room, one where the media isn't hovering over him all the time. And that was another problem with LA, with the Lakers, especially. I mean, with the Clippers, it's like, yeah, but it's the Clippers. With the Lakers, he's going to have every single eyeglass on him. And that's exactly what happened last season. When things started falling apart, when Russ was making mistakes, the Lakers media was all over him. The LA media was all over him, and that didn't help him at all. And he didn't respond to it well either.
He wasn't used to that level of scrutiny either, because if you look at the history of LA, of course they're gonna be on you, man. Like you're invited to a castle. Like you're not someone's barbecue party. Like this is like top of the top. This is a like very important platform. You don't just get to wing it. This life is Boston or Lakers. It's a special platform that has deep history. You don't just get to wing it and, I don't feel like talking to y'all. You don't get to do that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man. So what do you think? Because I think Russ can rebound, and I don't necessarily mean like he's going to rebound to be the old Russ that he was. I don't think he needs to be an all-star anymore, but he can definitely still contribute to a team, whether it's with the Lakers or not. Hopefully it would be nice to see him stay with the Lakers and prove to that organization, prove to all of those doubters out there that he can put his ego aside, that he can, swallow his pride and work with Pat Bev to ultimately bring the Lakers another championship.
And that's what I was going to touch on real fast is if he becomes teammates with Patrick is going to help Westbrook get better, period. That's the way I see it. Because I think Westbrook is going to find room to respect Pat for what he brings to, a team. because Patrick just has that, he has that aggressiveness too. He'll do everything he can to make things work.
He is also loyal to whatever team he is on.
Yeah, ride or die.
Yeah.
And that's probably what Westbrook needs, is someone who's ride or die. And when he sees that, he might just be like, okay, I'm going to go in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think hopefully Westbrook sees the Pat Beverly edition as a good thing and uses it to motivate himself to also grow. So, man, do you got any closing thoughts? Because I think we're all done here.
No, I mean, I would say the future is as bright as Westbrook makes it. He has all the tools in his toolbox. We just have to see him bring the tools out and get to work.
Yeah, for sure. Well said, man. Well said. Well, thank you all for joining us here on the Baller Boyz podcast. We just tackled a very hot topic in the form of Russell Westbrook. We wish nothing but the best for him. We're just a couple of, podcasters who are just observing what we've seen from the situation from this gentleman. We wish nothing but the best for him, his family as well. Fans, don't go harassing NBA players or their families. Remember that drama with Westbrook. That's not cool. But we are just giving our opinions, and this is just based on what we've seen, what we've heard, and we wish all the best for him, and I think he's got a lot in the tank. We both believe he still has a lot to provide in the NBA franchise, but maybe he can just sit back and kind of look at himself too, realize what areas that he can improve in, and I'm hoping he does that sooner rather than later, and so that he can, and especially I hope he does it with the Lakers. But yeah, at the end of the day, we want the best for him. But, again, we got to do this. This is podcasting, man. We give our opinions out here, and we want to thank you all for joining us here, listening to us talk about sports, and more sports. We hope you are entertained, and follow us on Twitter. Shemaiah, let them know what that handle is.
Well, my handle's not that great on the basketball court, but it is on Twitter. It's Shemaiah on the BT.
There you go. You heard it. Shemaiah on the BT. And you could follow me, Mark the MC, MARKTH, 3 3s, no E's, capital M, capital C. And just hit us up, man. We retweet some good stuff. We give you updates on the podcast. You could also check out Sweep the League as well. Both Shemaiah and I are part of Sweep the League. You can check out I Am Refocused Radio as well. That is the Shemaiah interview show. He gets all sorts of guests on there. Check out all 3 of those if you wish to be entertained just like you were tonight. And thank you for giving us your time and your ears. With that being said, tell your mom, tell your grandma, peace out.